I'm Martine Collier, President and CEO of CultureWorks, and we are so pleased to have you here this afternoon. Tom Schorgl, our speaker this afternoon, served as the President and CEO for CultureWorks from 1994 to 1997. In 1997, he relocated to Cleveland to head up a brand new organization, the Community Partnership for Arts and Culture. Can we give Tom a warm welcome back to Dayton after 18 years?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. It's been a while. So what I want to share with you tonight is what we did in Cleveland, Cuyahoga County, Northeast Ohio. And then I think the most important thing maybe is how did we get there? Cleveland had lost some major corporate headquarters. Not-for-profit organizations were experiencing the effects of globalization. Globalization meant fewer corporate contributions and more headquarters leaving Cleveland and going someplace else. Money was evaporating, to say the least, and it meant the loss of not only a workforce in Cleveland, but important to the arts and cultural sectors, trustees, donors, subscribers, and audience members. Foundations were asked to carry more and more of the responsibility. And the corporate sector, although it was dwindling, was being asked to do more and more, not just in terms of arts and culture, but any sort of not-for-profit organizations. And what the arts and cultural organizations wanted was a dedicated revenue stream for operating support. And individual artists wanted to have opportunity to receive public sector funding in terms of their career development. Private sector funding was strong compared to 15 other cities across the nation. However, there was no public sector funding, and when they looked around, these other cities had local public sector funding, and Cleveland did not. So one of the things that we started to see is that the arts and cultural sector was not yet recognized as an asset within a larger ecosystem comprised of different groups, institutions, and artists. The arts and cultural sector was disconnected from itself. They were factionalized in terms of acting together. They acted separately, and they were not unified around a common cause. Community leaders, particularly in the public sector, were becoming indifferent. They didn't care what was happening to the arts and cultural sector because they didn't see any sort of unified voice within the arts and cultural sector. Something happened. One of the things that we found that was very important is that as the arts and cultural sector and other community building sectors, such as neighborhood development, such as health and human services, began to see opportunities to work together. And these opportunities led to a much better sense of how are we going to, everybody, lift our aspirations up together as opposed to trying to do it in a single fashion. What it led to was a much stronger infrastructure around community economics, education, and arts and cultural development. Arts and culture as a sector. We got together with a number of organizations who had transactional data, and we said, you know, you don't own your customers. You think you own your customers, but you don't. And if we work together, you can develop a pool to draw from that can benefit each one of your organizations. We promise you will lower your marketing costs and you will increase your earned income. And we were able to deliver on that promise. And it was the first time that the arts and cultural sector had ever shared their membership data, which is the holy grail of not-for-profit organizations, with one entity. Now, the interesting thing there is that was a turning point in the organizations beginning to think of themselves as a sector. The sector, which prior to that was just seen as a sort of a group of arts and cultural organizations bickering amongst each other, became a point of collaboration, cooperation, and coordination. But one of the things I noticed that there were other people that needed to be involved in this, at least from my perspective, that weren't. So one of the first things I said, well, there's nobody from organized labor on the steering committee. And they said, well, why would we have anybody on organized labor? And I said, well, they are consumers of arts and cultural products and programs and services. And I said, if we're going to look at public sector funding as a viable way of adding and helping to solve the funding problem, they represent 250,000 families in Cuyahoga County, and they vote. And they vote in a way that can make the difference between whether an issue passes or fails. And the other thing is that we looked at what sort of commodities were out there that were relatively low cost but consumed at high rates. So we looked at things like cell phones, an excise tax on cell phones. We looked at excise taxes on boats. We have a lake, boats, you think, well, that'd be kind of interesting. We looked at excise tax on dry cleaning. And we also looked at excise tax on cigarettes. So we did about 3 years of planning. We did some positioning in terms of that plan, and we ultimately were able to produce public sector funding. Once Cuyahoga County had one of the lowest per capita supports for the arts. Today we have one of the highest, $15 million annually through a cigarettes excise tax. And if you look at the Ohio Arts Council in terms of its budget on an annual basis, right now it comes out at about $11.3 million. As I said, Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, one county, is generating $15 million for the arts and cultural sector, as well as arts and cultural projects, and importantly, individual artists. If Cuyahoga County were a state in the union, next to New York and Minnesota, it would be the highest funded state arts agency in the United States at a number 3 ranking. Not in per capita, but in real dollars. So since 2008, this cigarette tax has resulted in $112 million being invested in the arts and cultural sector. Operating support grants, project support grants, and fellowships to individual artists. You can't sit on the periphery when it comes to anything that has to do with your community. You're part of a larger force, and when you start to build that coalition, you will see a lot of things happen. So you got to get in the game, and the game is more than just the arts and cultural sector. It's the community, and it's the people in the community. See ya.
Thank you so much.